there, I'm Melisa Nielsen. Welcome to this week's video. This week I'm going to talk about autism and sort of busting through their stubbornness. This is definitely a question I get a lot. And goodness, do I have probably one of the most stubborn children on the planet. He's much better now. He's 24 and it's much easier than he was when he was younger. But I will say the ages from about 6 to 12 were the hardest. So my autism experience, again, I'm a mom of 5. My oldest has autism spectrum disorder. At one point he would have been diagnosed with Asperger's, but because that's not a diagnosis anymore, I think ASD is probably where it's at. But I will say that in all of the work that we did through his childhood and teenage years, adolescence, and into early adulthood, through that, I don't think he'd be diagnosable today. I think he's learned a lot of ways to adapt and self-regulate. I think self-regulation is huge, and it's something that is very hard to teach, but I think that when you can really focus as a parent on this child and what their needs are, then you'll know how your child needs you to teach them. 4 years old, he works for Amazon. He's a contributing member of society in every way, and I know that's from the things that we did to help combat that stubbornness. What happens is they get so stubborn that then we just feel like we're constantly pulling them to do things. And so I think the first place you have to look is within yourself. You have to look at your own temperament, and you have to look at the confidence that you have or don't have in raising this child. If you are struggling with your own confidence in how you're meeting them or showing up every day, then I'm going to invite you to get that in check first. Because if that part is not in check and you're just yelling all the time or crying all the time, you're not going to help this child at all. There were I definitely would say I was a yeller. Not so much anymore, but definitely when they were younger, I was definitely a yeller. And I learned a lot from that. He would cover his ears or he would hide, and so that was not the way to get through to him. I had to really help him understand what my frustration was at the time. Why was I angry at him? What was the challenge right then? And I think that helping them to see that it's such a huge piece. Such a huge piece. They all have something inside them that doesn't feel quite right. And so you want to sort of get to the heart of what that feels like. So for Harry, he used to say, I feel wiggly. And it would be like his insides were vibrating and he couldn't control them. And he just would act out or, melt down. And it was my job to be able to help him regulate that. That's my job. That's my job. That's your job. If you've got a child with autism spectrum disorder or anything there, you've got to really ask yourself, okay, how am I showing up? Because me being crazy was not going to help him. So I had to really help him name those emotions, understand how he was feeling. And when he was really little, that was really hard. Sometimes when he was really little, I just had to hold him and not in the loving, sweet mama hold. No, there were definitely some bear holds, and there were definitely some me holding him so he wasn't hurting somebody else. And, really being able to help him regulate that piece and to know what he was feeling in his body. So when you've got them really being stubborn and you're trying to help them eke out of their comfort zone, you might do things with them that you wouldn't do with your other kids. You might find yourself giving incentives. I'm definitely not an incentive mom, especially if it's not a natural incentive. I don't like it, but it was what he needed. So again, it's looking at what do they need? What does each child need that's different? So when I looked at what he needed incentives. He needed an incentive. I remember when I remember when he was trying to ride a two-wheeler. He was 7.5, maybe. And my son below him was already riding a two-wheeler, riding circles around him. And my mom taking his bike and riding his bike around the block was not the incentive he needed. It just made him mad. The incentive he needed? Seriously. I said, well, we had this little store in Idaho Falls. In this little store where it was called the Candy Cottage, and he loved the Candy Cottage. And of course, it was an old-timey store that had candy everywhere, truffles and ice cream and jelly beans and all the M&Ms. Like, it was this great place. And I remember saying, if you can stay on your bike to go all the way around the park, we'll go to the Candy Cottage. That was the incentive he needed. He worked really well on incentives. It helped get over the stubbornness. So in life, like as an adult, he'll even do this with himself. Like, when I do this, then I get this. And it helps him like get over the stubbornness. It helps him get through that space. Now, people might argue with me and say, that's not a way to do it. That's not teaching him real world things. Yes, actually it is. You're okay. You're welcome to have your opinion about things. But that's what worked for us. It worked for us to get out of that space. I will say, if you're in the moment and you've got stubbornness in the moment, you're not going to get them out of it in the moment. So you've got to plan ahead. You've got to really think about what they need and think about what's ahead. And if it's something you know they're going to fight you about, then take some time to go, okay, how are we going to get through this? Like, okay, well, if I talk about this, or figure out what it is that lights them up that will help them get through it. For him, he's phlegmatic. Anything about food lit him up. Food, comfort, all those things lit him up. But that's not everybody. I will say, I do think it's interesting, the number of kids that have ASD or full-blown autism that are phlegmatic. I think it's super strange, but very interesting. It's definitely not all, because then we have on the other end of the spectrum, kids that have spectrum things going on, that have more ADHD or ADD tendencies. They tend to be choleric, sanguine, and in that like polarization. But, definitely when it comes to the stubbornness, slow down and ask yourself, what does this child need? And then when you do that, you've got to plan. You've got to plan. If I hadn't had a plan with him, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So have a plan. Have a plan and think about how you're showing up. So, be flexible with your plan. Hold the line. They need you to hold the line. You cannot be wishy-washy. You have got to be because they're such black and white thinkers. It's either right or wrong. So you've got to be accurate in what you're saying to them, and you've got to be always holding the line. Always. If you mess up even one time, it will be a problem. So it's funny, because even at 24 years old, he'll say, I know you never lied to me except for that one time. The one time I lied to him was because he and his sister have birthdays 2 days apart. And I planned a surprise birthday party. And I had to lie to him about the birthday party. He's 24. That was when he was probably 11 years old, and he still remembers it. And he knows that was the one time that I lied to him. So when you really think about how you're going to show up for these kids, know that you've got to be on it all the time. All the time. And it's exhausting. So get breaks. If you have respite care in your state, look into it. I didn't even know it existed back then. Did not even know it existed, or I would have done it. But if you've got respite care, get the help you need. If you've got questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I also have a really good friend that works with kids that have special needs. I'm happy to give you her name and recommendation if you need it. She works with parents to help them find the resources that they need. So drop me a note in the comments if you've got, or send me a DM or PM if you've got some needs that you might need some help with, and I'm happy to pass you on to her. So again, I hope you have a wonderful week. I wanted to say, really embrace the space. There are so many beautiful things about your child that you might not have even discovered yet. And it does get better as they get older. It totally gets better as they get older. And But you have to be on it. You have to be on it, because otherwise, if you're not on it, it's not going to get better. It's just going to be an older child with the same challenges. So I know you can do it. I'm here to help. I'll see you later. Have a good week.